Everyone, welcome to this introduction video where I just want to share a little bit more about my journey and my vision for this group and what we can expect. And so that you can know that this isn't something that just came out of thin air. This has actually been a lot of trial and error and a lot of turning points in my journey that I just wanted to share more with all of you. So you know that this is an accumulation of someone's life and not just something that's just here for something that's very temporary. I mean, everything is very temporary, but knowing that this is something that I have been looking forward to for a really, really long time. And the fact that it's actually happening right now is something that I could barely even believe and comprehend, but I'm also just so excited to be here and knowing that it's actually happening. So, first and foremost, my name is Kathleen Short. I go by K.Short, and it can be interchangeable. Just kind of depends on where we're at. Sometimes the setting calls for K.Short, and sometimes the setting calls for Kathleen. And so I will respond to either of them. So, I think first and foremost, when it comes to names, I just want to make sure that when we're in this space that we try our best to honor people's names and attempt to say them correctly, even if it's a little uncomfortable for the first 10 seconds, 20 seconds, even 1 minute. And so, another thing that's really important about being in this space is, of course, honoring not only our names, but also our pronouns and how we choose to identify in this world. So, my pronouns currently are she, her, they, them. And so, yeah, so just make sure that when you all are communicating with each other, that that's something that is just top of mind and that you just ask and be curious about, so that we can continue to connect with each other the way that we would like to feel connected to. So, when it comes to my personal journey, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, more specifically in West Phoenix, in a neighborhood called Maryvale. And a lot of people would actually call it Scaryvale because of a lot of the things that were happening in that community. It was a low income community, and I was also, you know, the only Asian in the area. Maybe there was a handful, not. Yeah, so I think just growing up in a predominantly Mexican and Hispanic neighborhood, um, that's going to be a lot of my influences. So growing up, the rest of the kids already knew that I was a little different because my eyes were just a little bit smaller than theirs. And so, even from kindergarten, that was the first time that I started feeling othered, right? And then, going through elementary school, easily folks were asking me, if I was a boy or girl. And then, like in middle school, that's when I ended up coming out. And so that was another way that I was othered. And so that's really where my personal development journey started happening. I remember being 12 years old, and somehow the book, the 12, what is the book called? Oh, Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And that book came across, my desk somehow. I think it was from a friend. And that's when I was instantly hooked to personal development. I feel like I was personally hooked because during that time when I came out, it was 2002, and being othered and being isolated, I ended up losing a lot of my friends because during that time, people weren't talking about queerness, and definitely not in my neighborhood or in my schools. And so, as someone who's quite talkative and was chatty and had a lot of friends, when I did come out, like I said, I ended up becoming like isolated and only was really hanging out with teachers and things that sort. So that's where I'm thinking that's where the book came from. I can't remember exactly, but maybe it was a blessing in disguise, where I didn't have to focus on my identity at that point. Everyone else was focusing on it, but I got the chance to read this book, and I just really ate it up and really had a liking for it. In hindsight, when I think about that book, what messaging I could have received growing up, I think underlying messaging is that maybe that there was something wrong with me. I think that's something that I remember, coming out and being like, oh, that there's something wrong with me. Like I remember people wanting to stay away from me. And so I think maybe getting that book might have also heightened that feeling because it was something that I just devoured. You know what I mean? Anything to take my mind off of what was actually happening in school. Even though it's something that's been a part of my life for the past 15 years and then some, um, it's also this it's also been this blessing and a curse in the sense of like, yes, I'm always working on myself, but also this underlying like that there's something wrong with me, and the reality is that there's nothing wrong with me. You know what I mean? Like there's things I can obviously improve on and get better at, but I just getting growing up and continuously consuming this content, like it just never felt like enough. Like my life is always going to be a project, right? Myself is always going to be a project. And so I'm finally getting to this stage of my life where I get to just enjoy being myself and the work that I've done. And it has paid off exponentially. You know, when I'm amongst my peers, like, some, a comment that I receive often is a level of certainty that I have in myself and knowing who I am when I walk into certain rooms. Sometimes I don't feel that way, but maybe in comparison to other people who didn't get othered so often growing up, where they were accepted for whatever reason, like I've always had to ask myself, like, what makes me different? Why are young people, or why are my peers, making me feel different than everybody else, when I didn't feel that way? I felt like I was like everybody else, and I still feel that way, and I really want to commend my younger self and for my older self to be like, I've stayed true to myself amongst what the world has told me otherwise. Don't get me wrong, there was times where I've wavered and have fallen into different groups and categories and making me think like that's who I am. But at the end of the day, I've always came back to myself. I've always came back to who I know myself to be. And that person is very curious. This person gets very passionate very easily. This person loves journaling and reflecting. This person loves 90s music, you know what I mean? Pop music specifically. Like those things haven't gone away, and so yeah, that's when, personal development sparked for me, was when I continuously was othered, and this 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens fell into my lap. And so ever since then, I have been working on myself and becoming a better version of myself, and just consuming so much information, and more importantly, applying it, and so, like I said, it is a double-edged sword as to, making sure that we get to acknowledge and celebrate who we are and the work that we've done, but also realizing, like, that growth is important. And, a current quote that's been surfacing is like, if you're not growing, you're dying, but at the same time, it's like, it's simultaneously happening. So just something to think about, and just kind of knowing, like, yeah, I've been consuming this content for a very long time. And so to create this community is a place where I want to share it with other people, because I think now more than ever, the world is telling us who we are, right? And I think now more than ever, self-awareness is so important. And again, it's something I've been tuning into myself since the third grade. I've been journaling since the third grade, and it's a practice and a ritual that I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have it. I grew up as an only child. I do have siblings. I have 6 older siblings, but they're about 15 to 30 years older than me. So all I truly had was myself. And so I didn't really have folks witnessing my being and my experiences. My mom is self-employed. She, had an adult care home. So I was surrounded always by older people, that were coming and going and transitioning in this life. And then I had my dad, who was working his 9 to 5. And so there was a lack of presence in my household, so there was a lot of just growing up and consuming a lot of MTV and playing out in the street and being with my next door neighbors and being at friends' houses, not coming home when the lights came on, so I needed a place to process the experiences I was having, especially just those feelings of exclusion, and trying to understand, like, why is it that that's the case, and but also just like what's happening in my life, of course, being a young person and being queer and experiencing dating someone for the first time and feeling those isms for the first time and the homophobia and things of that sort. Like, I needed a place to understand that stuff. And so you'll know throughout this whole course that writing is going to be highly encouraged. Journaling is going to be highly encouraged, because I feel like there's so much power in the pen to paper situation, just because it slows us down and allows us to think and to ponder and to just really sit with ourselves. Yeah, so those are the biggest things that you're going to be seeing throughout this course is the self-awareness, and also the mentorship. That's, because that's something that I didn't get growing up. That's something that I sought out. I attempted to seek out guides and mentors and teachers and leaders in my life. And to be fully transparent, they were hard to find. And I think they were hard to find because I didn't see myself in them. Thankfully, I'm able to see beyond all of our identities, but But at the end of the day, in the world that we live in, we want to see that there are people in leadership that look like us, that come from similar backgrounds. And so that's truly the reason why I'm coming onto this online space, because I'm creating the things I wish I saw growing up. And so for a long time, just to fast forward, getting to college, I was like, how can I serve other people, and so I thought at first it was becoming a teacher, and I remember I was taking my education classes and I enjoyed them, but then I had to pick a subject, and so I chose English. And after my British literature class, I was like, I'm not gonna I don't want to teach this. This is not a curriculum that I'm passionate about. And so for me, just trying to navigate life, as a young person, as a first generation, Filipino in the United States, first generation college student, and thankfully later first generation college graduate, I just remember thinking like, I'm not passionate about any of this. I'm passionate about life. I'm passionate about how to live a better life. And I don't want to be confined to the curriculum that the educational system wants me to teach. And I sure as heck don't want to be confined to a classroom. And so I remember being in my third year when we had to choose a major, and I did choose education, but I did a switch and I was like, how can I still be an educator in the world? How can I meet people where they're at? How can I meet people online? YouTube was just coming up. And becoming really popular for what it was during 2010, 11, 12. And I was like, how can I make the world my classroom? And how can I teach people that actually want to be there? I hated the idea of teaching students that didn't want to be there. It's a waste of their time and it's a waste of my time. And so I was just like, there has to be something else. And so the best that I came up with was becoming a talk show host. And so I thought, Ellen and Oprah are getting older. Eventually they're going to have to pass the torch. Who is that going to be to? And so I changed my major to communication studies and public relations. And I absolutely loved my degree, kind of looking back on it in hindsight. Maybe the more traditional path was choosing a mass communications degree with journalism and things of that sort. But I loved communication studies so much that I didn't even know the difference. My advisor just said, you need to take communications. And I chose the one that made the most sense to me at the time. And so I loved public speaking. I loved learning about groupthink. I loved learning about nonverbal communication, interpersonal communication. And so for a long time, my story was like, oh, darn it, I got the wrong degree. But now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got the most perfect degree, because people don't know how to communicate with each other and are not paying attention to the ways that we're communicating with each other without the words that we're even saying. Right. And so just know that when I'm in this space, like leadership and mentorship is huge to me. I think it's so important that we become not only leaders in our communities, in our families, in our friend groups, but we first have to start off being leaders in our own lives. And I'm not perfect at it, but as someone who's grown up as only child, I almost like didn't have a choice. I didn't have, my parents or older siblings to be like, hey, how do you do certain things? Because I was the first one here born in this country and I had to navigate new territory, so they said, you have to go ask your teachers. You got to ask other people. Like literally my mom be like, I have no clue, like ask your teachers, And so that's where my curiosity just got even more heightened, and that I had to become not only to find resources, but I had to become resourceful, And so full transparency, it's a double-edged sword also, my curiosity is so potent that I sought out those answers. But now that I'm getting to a new chapter in my life, it's realizing that I also have all the answers too, especially the answers that are best for me. I don't have all the answers in the world, but I have all the answers that are best for me, that I know what's best for me, that I've been with myself for the past 35 years, So that's the great thing about coming into this space now, y'all, is that you were getting me at a time in my life where like, yes, like I've lived this whole life prior to this moment, but now I'm getting to integrate all of these beautiful lessons and wisdom and experiences that I'm like, okay, like, yeah, this is the good stuff that came from personal development. This is the good stuff from, being an only child, things of that sort. And there were some things that may have translated unsubconsciously to say that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't loved, that I wasn't all these things. But now y'all are getting me at a point. I'm like, no, like that is so much further than the truth. And the things that I experienced, the things that I thought went wrong are actually now are becoming what's my superpowers. And so that's why I'm so excited to be here with all of you, because I do think that that's something that a lot of people never work through. And so that's why that self-awareness is really important. That mentorship is really important to me. And that leadership is really important to me. So just know that even though I'm the one who's putting our club together, just know that we're all leaders and that we all have influence. And even though that I'm the one just facilitating this because I love gathering people, just know that I'm also a fellow learner and a collaborator with all of you, that I'm not walking ahead of you. I'm not walking behind you. I'm walking alongside you. So just know that I'm super passionate about sharing, the collective wisdom and knowing that everyone has something to contribute. We're all a part of the body. Like there's no one person that's more important than the other. We need our pinky toe just as much as we need our core. There's nothing and no one that's more important, and that everyone brings something to the table. So that college, I graduated first generation college student. That's exactly what my immigrant Filipino parents wanted. And afterwards, what was I to do next? Okay, so I'm going to be a talk show host. Okay, maybe I didn't get the right degree at that time because I didn't know that maybe I should go to a TV station or whatever the case. So what did I do? What I thought was best for me? I started a YouTube channel. So I started a YouTube channel. You all can go check that out and see see all of the things that I experimented with during that time. And that was a place where I really was just doing self-therapy. I was documenting my journey. Again, a big part of my heart has always been to walk alongside people, to share with people what I'm learning so that it supports people in their journey. I never thought that I knew more than people, or like whatever I was experiencing was better. Like I was just like, this is where I'm at, y'all, and this is what I'm learning in the process. And so the segment was called Short Talk Sunday. So every Sunday I would come on and just share what I learned from the week. Later that developed into a segment called Phoenix Rising, because going back home to Phoenix after moving from Flagstaff, I just noticed that my city felt different. I was just like, okay, something's going on. There's a lot of energy here, and I want to see, who's contributing to that energy. And so I started this segment called Phoenix Rising, and that's when I started, doing my hosting and my interviewing, right? So I started interviewing creatives in the community, just leaders in general. I'll say this, that leaders have always had an affinity. That's something that I've always had an affinity towards. And so, yeah, anyone who I just felt like was being a positive role model in the community, I interviewed. So you can check out all of those videos on my old channel too. And then I just started playing around. There was a lot of other segments that were coming up also. And yeah, I was just using that place as space to practice and pursuing my hopes and dreams of becoming a talk show host. During that time, I eventually got into radio, which is crazy because I ended up working for like our local radio station, which was like the radio station. It was called Power 98.3. It was at the time, if you're from Phoenix, it's Power 92.3. And that was a hip hop station. And so that was my first step into the industry. I remember that I took like a sacrifice in that sense where I had to have college credit for it. I was already graduated from college. So I found a community college, paid the community college so that I can work for free and being intern, and it was worth it, So during that time, it was probably around 2016, and Instagram came out, right? And so we started doing video on Instagram, and the world started becoming a little different during that time. And so I was a promotions assistant and eventually became like the internship coordinator, and got to go to all the concerts, got to meet the artists. I got to meet all of my favorite artists, so I was really happy about that. But yeah, that was my first step into the industry, until it got to a point where things started getting a little weird. I was like, oh, like again, like I said, Instagram was popping off, and the industry, they always say it's about who you know, right? And you just never really knew who was for you. You never knew who was using you as a stepping stone to get to where they wanted to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, and this is a reframe, there's nothing wrong with like being used, because that means that you bring something of value. The point that's important is to make sure that you know your worth. you know your worth, and that you're setting those boundaries, that you're not being overused. And yeah, just having those feelings that you were taking advantage of, because at the end of the day, if you got taken advantage of, that's more on us than on the other person. So but I didn't like that feeling, and then I didn't know that then, and so thankfully I've always been decent at setting boundaries, but I just remember feeling like I was hanging out with a whole bunch of like bullies. I was like, ugh. I was like, I don't like that feeling. I don't like knowing if they're for me or against me. And that if they're only for me, it's because they can only get something from me. I was like, it's not my favorite feeling in the world. And if I'm constantly surrounded by it because of this industry, I was like, I don't think this is the industry that's for me. And so I ended up leaving the radio station, and then I went to print media, and I was like, that's not really my thing either. And so I ended up collaborating from someone that I knew not only from college, we went to college together, but someone that I've known since we were 15 when we were first taking college courses together during the summer. And so we created a multimedia local platform. Basically, we were creating, like our own community. And so with my Phoenix Rising segment and what I was doing with my YouTube channel and how they wanted to create platform and really see what was going on in Phoenix, and both of us being locals, we just started tapping into the community and joining our forces and wanting to create that space for creatives. And so this is one thing that you'll know is that I have an affinity towards creatives. I think self-expression is super important. I feel like creatives, particularly artists and musicians and things that sort, someone who grew up watching MTV, someone whose dream job was to be a VJ on TRL for Carson Daly after, he had his time and the things that he did, who also started in radio. I was like, how can I create this platform and how can I elevate the people in our community, right? And so again, for me, it was about leaders who were also creative and vice versa, because I knew that that representation was important. It was important to me. So I was like, how can I find, cutie BIPOC, musicians and artists, and how can I highlight more of what they're doing? Because the fact that they're expressing themselves despite, what's happening to them in the world, like that was their form of expression. And I feel like music is a universal language. I feel like art is a universal language. And it just made so much sense to me. That was something that I was so and still passionate about. And so, so this is when I started combining like education and entertainment. This is when I started meeting with creatives in the community on a weekly basis. This is when I was holding them accountable to their projects and to their art, and this is when we started putting on events and started bringing people together and really empowering them. Because the reality is, being cutie BIPOC, not everyone wanted to, nor did they have access to go to college, nor did they have the discipline to stick through it. Statistically, a lot of people leave school after the first semester. So I was like, how can I bring what I've learned from college and create these rhythms for them to stay accountable to themselves, because we need their art, we need their music, we need their expression. And I say that for someone who doesn't even want to play the ukulele, like it's again a universal language. And if we can be putting out a positive message, how can it be through something that we all can understand? And so I met with creatives weekly. I supported them in their projects, created opportunities for them to continue to build their brands and to build the things that they wanted to create. And then I realized that creatives and artists and musicians are who they are for a reason. That those rhythms, are sometimes hard to stick by, but the reality is those who do stick by it are the ones who end up becoming successful. But they do it with help. They have managers and they have a whole team, who can support them in wielding that expression. And so I didn't understand that then. I understand that now, but I just realized at that time I was like, this isn't quite it yet either. Because as much as I love creatives, I was like, that leadership component, that mentorship component is super important to me. And how can I bring young people into this whole process? And so during that time, I ended up moving to Tucson. And so at this point, this is already the third and last major city in Arizona. And during that time, I went into what most people call the dark night of the soul, So that's when I realized that what I was doing wasn't working. And as someone who grew up on the internet for a majority of my life, starting off with MySpace, I realized that I had a lot of weight on what the internet said about me, a lot of my self-esteem, a lot of my self-validation, being a words of affirmations person. I relied too heavily on social media and the internet at that time. And so I feel like I was brought to that place to die to my old self. And that was a time where I really felt isolated and really just got quiet. And and really just started doing some deep work. And a lot of the deep work meant doing nothing and just resting, and just sitting with who I was at that time. And so, you know, the great thing that came out of during that time in Tucson, it lasted about 2 or 3 years, was I got my best friend out of it, and I started really focusing on relationships and friendships. And so I just during that time I just realized there was no point of me pushing to be a talk show host if I didn't have people to enjoy it with when I got there. I've always known in my heart that there's this bigger vision and bigger life for myself, but like I said, there was no point of me continuously working if I didn't have people to bring up alongside me and for us to all enjoy it. And so yeah, this is when I met my best friend, and this is when we started really doing some deep work with each other and really having a spiritual practice on how we can show up for each other and the things that we needed to work on. So the personal development left the books and it started happening in person. And so I'm just so grateful for that time, because of my best friend, we ended up moving to San Diego, having the courage to leave Arizona, and started building a life out here. And so we moved here the day after Christmas of 2019, and we spent the pandemic here. And so that again required another level of communication. It required another level of vulnerability, another level of transparency, and just so many of those soft skills that I didn't get the chance to learn growing up as an only child, and what it means to share, and what it means to, speak your truth, and what it means to, share my feelings. My goodness, all of it was relied on to my journal, and like how to actually express them and ask for what I want and what I need. That's what brings me to where we're at now. So for the past 4 years, I started jumping onto online and looking for opportunities and taking courses and learning from a lot of gurus online and things of that sort. And I have just finally come to the place where I have yet to see and find what I'm looking for. And if I do find it, it's not coming from a vessel that I really resonate with. And so uh, so I thought at this point, that someone would have eventually taken the space of being the talk show host. I thought at this point that someone would eventually become the educator and guide and mentor and leader that I've been looking for. I thought at this time that the communities that I've been looking for would have already been created, and they have yet to be created. And I realized is because I'm supposed to be the one creating it, that I'm supposed to be the one who's supposed to be that visible representation. I'm the one who's supposed to be that mentor and guide for other people that resonate with me. There's a vision in my heart, y'all, that is such a clear feeling. It's not clear in terms of, you know, exactly what it is, because I do think that that's a lot of the messaging that we get is like, write down exactly what you want, which I completely agree with. I definitely think it's important to have some level of blueprint, but I've learned that it's not necessarily the specificities of how much money I'm making and where I'm living and the people I'm around. It's more of the feeling in my body that when I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And so, full transparency, when it comes to recording videos, y'all, I get really excited and I love being here, and sharing and expressing myself through this medium, and just getting to share, what I've learned along the way. But I just want you to know that I'm here because I have yet to see what I want to exist in the world. And so, since I don't see it, I feel like I have been called to create it. And so, just know again that when it comes to being in this space, the values of this particular community is connection, collaboration, creativity, mentorship, leadership, just all of these things that have really guided me through my life so far. That self-awareness, the self-reflection, right? Doing the work and being in relationship with people, being in friendship with people, communication, my goodness, communication, so important. These are going to be the foundations of what's important in this group, and more importantly, it's going to be the educational part and the integration part. So what I'm going to be sharing with all of you here is going to be things that we're all going to collectively be like, hey, like this is what's really important in our lives right now. In full transparency, you're going to probably be like, that's not of interest to me right now. So I'm going to put this group on mute during the season that they're in, whether it's health, finances, relationships, business, whatever the case may be. And that's okay. But just know that like this place is really about creating new foundations for our life, to create the life that we want to live and really connecting with each other and collaborating with each other on how we can live the best life that we want to live. And so as you've heard my whole story, that's why it's so important to me. At the end of the day, like I'm creating what I wish I had when I was younger. I'm creating and I'm becoming who I wish I needed when I was younger. And so, this is something that I want to be more of a collaborative and communal endeavor, because I don't want to do it by myself, but I know my role in the community, and my role in the community is to connect people, to facilitate, to bring people together, and to bring us down to common ground, and being on common ground in this community. There's nowhere else but going up. And so I just want you to know, to when it comes to the vision of this place and in this community, I look forward to the masterminds. I look forward to the retreats, to the conferences, to the traveling, and to meeting you all in person. This is a global network that I want to build. That would be crazy for me to not pursue in 2024 and in the 2020s of humanity. So we're going for it, and it's starting right here. So what you can look forward to, of course, is the activities, the discussions, the challenges, and most importantly, the support, the mentorship, the guidance, in terms of us becoming better leaders in our own lives, so that we can be better leaders in our communities, in our families, in our friend groups, our workplaces, and just in the neighborhoods that we have been placed in. And so I just want you to know that I am here to build community, and that everyone's journey is so valued and so celebrated. The fact that you're here, the fact that you want to become better, the fact that you want to step up and break those generational chains, these are not easy endeavors, y'all. And so we need each other. And more importantly, they need us. Like the people that we have been given our lives, and the people that we have yet to serve need us. And that's like the biggest thing for me, y'all, is that I cannot keep being invisible, because there's a group of y'all that will, and I want you to think about this for the people you're meant to serve. The people that we're meant to serve are suffering the more that we hide ourselves, the more that we continue to be invisible. And so this is me showing up, raising my hand and be like, hey, I'm here to help, and I want to help you if you feel like that this is a good fit. So I hope that you all are excited to be here. I'm so excited to finally get started, y'all. This has just been such a long time coming. And so it's going to be imperfect. It's going to be messy. But gosh, it's going to be so good. So I'm just so excited to be here with all of you. I'm so excited to build this community with all of you. And yeah, I would just love for you to just jump in, dive in if you feel like this feels in alignment for you. So introduce yourself in the introduce yourself category sections. Make sure to join in on the discussions. More importantly, take on the challenges, the little challenges here in this space, so that we can take on the bigger challenges that are going on out in the world and in our lives. So if you want to connect with me directly, you can do it here in this particular group. Or if you just want to, connect with me online, also, you can follow me on Instagram at K.Short. You can go to my website. I'll start blogging there and things of that sort with connectwithkshort.com. And then, yeah, if you want any updates regarding our community, you can subscribe to my newsletter at connectwithkshort.com/newsletter. And all right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for learning a little bit more about my story. Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know, like, this isn't something that's happening overnight. This is something that has been wanting to happen for a really long time. And this is the start of it all. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you so much for your being. And thank you so much for raising your hand of wanting to be a part of this community. And more importantly, for wanting to be a leader in your life. So thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to meeting you all very, very soon. All right. Bye, y'all.